My name is Ryan Britt. I am a fifth-generation farmer, farming with my dad in north central Missouri. We're here in the Rockford River bottom right now, just off the Missouri River, where the Sheraton River meets it. We farm corn, soybeans, wheat, and a cow-calf to finished beef operation. We're sitting in front of some of our planters today. We've got a couple different varieties, and each machine has its strengths, and that's what we try to use them for. We've got the 60-foot 24-row planter in the middle, and it primarily is used for planting corn, and it can put two different liquids on while we're planting corn. The planter on my right is a split row 1790 deer that primarily plants soybeans. And then we have the drill on the other side, and it gets used for a lot of things. It plants soybeans in 15-inch rows, but then we also plant the wheat with it in 7.5-inch rows, and we'll plant cover crops with it in 7.5-inch rows. Well, let's start in the center, talk about corn. Everybody wants to talk about corn, and then we'll go from there. So, as I said, we've been no-tilling for a long time and using cover crops for a lot of that time. And the things that have changed through the years that I think make it easier for me to do today than maybe it was in the past, and hopefully more successful than it was in the past, is mostly the equipment. And if there was only one thing that I was going to add to a planter to make it work very well in no-till and especially cover crop conditions, it would be hydraulic downforce. I think with cover crops, we go from being too wet to very hard and dry in a short period of time. And that's a good thing when we're trying to get in the field, but it can be a tough thing when we're trying to get a planter adjusted correctly and get that seed into the right depth. And that hydraulic downforce allows us to reach that depth and use the force that it takes to get there. And also, it gives us the ability to vary that force going across the field to allow us to keep getting that seed into the right depth. I feel like if you're going to spend any money on a planter, that would probably be the first place to start. The next, maybe most important thing, may be the closing system. There's a lot of different closing systems out there, and everybody has a different opinion. And that's okay, because everybody has different fields and different soil types and different management practices and are comfortable running in different conditions. One of the systems that we like to use is this FurrowForce. It's a precision planting product. What I like about it is it's actually closing that seed trench, doing a little bit of tillage technically in the seed trench, but don't tell all my no-till friends. And then we're packing it down at the end. And so it is doing a really good job of creating a seed bed that if you have never seen it before, or sometimes it's hard to find the seed when you're digging because it actually puts that seed where it looks like you hadn't created any trench at all. So the third thing that I think is probably most important on the planter for the no-till cover crop system is the row cleaners. A lot of different options out there. I like a row cleaner that has the air control, or it can be hydraulic control where we can adjust it. As conditions change, we find that we have to either put pressure on the row cleaner or take pressure off the row cleaner. And there's times we lift them up out of the way. The challenge if we don't have row cleaners is there are times that we can hairpin and we can do some things where we're not creating an optimal environment. If we're willing to be patient and wait for ideal conditions, then maybe that's not totally necessary. Most of us are not very patient. My wife can verify that. But so we have to have the row cleaners where we can adjust that on the fly and keep rolling. So this planter has the ability to put two different liquid products on, and we're using what's called Precision Planting's furrow jets. It's actually putting it in 3 different streams. So we're putting some in the bottom of the furrow, we're putting some on the sides of the trench, and that allows us to put a little higher rate on and still protect the seed. And we can put a pretty good dose of nutrients in that furrow. And I think the cover crop environment does require us to probably manage that fertility a little differently. And that's probably the next step is we use what are conceal knives and on the other side of this row unit. And this conceal knife is actually putting nitrogen 3 inches beside the row. I feel like that gives our plants a head start. They don't have to go searching for the nutrients, and also it limits the nutrients that the cover crops are taking up that the plant won't have available until that cover crop's recycled. I think that the general rule is that there's probably not one single system that's going to work perfect all the time, but I do think that the flexibility of some of these systems creates a wider range of conditions that we can operate in, and that's what most of us are looking for, so we can get it done in a short period of time. So here we have our soybean planter. All three of these machines can plant soybeans, and at times do plant soybeans, especially the air seeder in this one, but this is probably our go-to, does a lot of our soybean planting. What I like about this planter is, once again, the hydraulic downforce. We can add or subtract force very fast, many times a second as we're varying across the field. The next thing this one has are these closing wheels, are spiked closing wheels. I think these are maybe a Yetter twister. I like this system a lot. It does not require any kind of air or any kind of monitor or anything. It's just using the spring and the spring pressure, and then it uses these fingers to help close that furrow. What we have found is when conditions are not 100% ideal, this is a night and day difference in getting that furrow closed. I really like this system. It is a lot cheaper than some of the other systems, and so it might be a quicker return on the investment. Okay, one other thing I'd like to mention is our row cleaners. In soybeans, we've tried it without row cleaners, and you can do that fine. We found that with the row cleaners, we just got a little better population. We were able to see more consistent emergence at a closer time. But there's also the challenge to that, in that I feel pretty strongly that we have to be able to control those. We have to be able to lift them up as conditions, because I don't want them to plow. You know, that's probably the biggest danger of the row cleaners. So what I like is this air cylinder actually can lift this unit up, and so we can get it entirely out of the way, or it can put pressure on it to hold it down into the ground. We're trying to get that residue pushed to the side so we don't hairpin it in the trench. The last piece of equipment we'll look at is the air seeder, which we use for planting soybeans and wheat and cover crops. All right, so here we have our air seeder. We do use it for planting beans. We'll lock up one of the rows or gangs, and we'll plant them in 15-inch rows. If we got real late in the season, we may choose to put that gang down and plant 7.5-inch rows to capture sunlight quicker, close that canopy quicker. But generally, we like the 15-inch rows. A couple things that I find important on this thing is the closing wheel. I liked, once again, the fingered or the spiked closing wheel. We seem to be able to close that trench better. And then the other thing that all of our machines have are these spiked or spoked gauge wheels. So outside of that, you know, with an air seeder, I think one of the limitations is it does have hydraulic downforce for the whole gang, but it's not individual row. And so sometimes we have a harder time getting that consistent depth with the air seeder. If conditions are pushing either really hard or we get into real soft conditions one way or the other, is where that can be a challenge. In a lot of conditions, we don't have any trouble at all. When we purchased this drill, we were primarily purchasing it to seed cover crops. It's a really expensive unit to use to seed cover crops, and you don't have to have this much drill to seed cover crops, but it does a very nice job. That gave us the confidence to go ahead and use it in soybeans also. We spent so much money on it, we needed to justify it, and so that's why we're using it in soybeans too. And obviously, we can cover the ground quicker, keeping all the machines running. It seems like our window is usually pretty tight in the spring. What I really like about this one is wheat and cover crops, it does an excellent job. In soybeans, I think that most of the time we can do a good job with this and be happy with it. If I could only have one machine and I wasn't planting corn, this is probably what I would have. And so we found that by having all three machines, we're able to get over the acres in the amount of time that we need to. It's not always perfect, but we we can keep each one of them in their strength and try to keep them running, and we can accomplish our goal of getting that cover down, or in the spring, getting that seed put in when we need to. And then the rest of it, we just try to manage what we have to work with after that.